You're listening to Worshipology with Curtis Parks, a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation about living and leading worship. Let's lean into today's episode.
Well, hey, thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of Worshipology. I'm so excited because not only one person is on the other end of this line, but we got two amazing worship leaders, Brad and Rebekah. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
We're doing well.
Now, I met you guys, let's see, I guess we were both in the D.C. area.
Yes.
And, of course, you guys have been traveling most of your ministry life, if I'm correct.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, most of our ministry married life.
Yes, exactly. Good call on that. Now, tell me a little bit about your guys' story. I mean, just for those who are listening, if you haven't heard of Brad and Rebekah, a couple that leads worship all over the place. They do incredible things with missions, and we're going to get into all that. You've got a brand new record out called Life Again, and we're going to chat about that. But, man, just kind of tell our listeners, how did you guys get started in ministry and in worship in particular?
Well, I grew up in the church, and so did Rebekah. For me, it was wanting to be part of the worship team, and I had a good friend that was gracious enough to teach me 4 chords at a time for that weekend's set. You know, every once in a while, it'd be a special chord in there that we'd have to learn, and kind of just threw me right into it. So it was, probably 4 or 6 weeks of like starting to learn how to play guitar. Next thing you know, I was up there singing alongside him and struggling along.
Wow.
But that just kind of birthed the passion inside of me, and I think woke something up that I wasn't probably even thinking about really until I started doing that.
Man, and how old were you when you got started, Brad?
Probably 14.
Okay. What's your story, Rebekah? What kind of like led you into singing, and how did you discover that gift?
Yeah, so my dad was a music pastor back in the day, the old school, like where we do the choir and the worship set and the musicals with the full orchestras and stuff. So I was immersed in that. I grew up in that environment in the church. I didn't really want to be like a pastor's wife, necessarily. But I was just, I fell in love with just ministry, like in worship and experiencing the presence of God in that, and helping usher other people into that place as well. And then in college, I was studying music and still not really knowing like if I was going to do that as a career. And God just kind of spoke to me, and we were ministering at a pastor's event, and he was like, this is what I made you to do. So I'd been singing since I was young. I loved singing. I love all aspects of singing. But there's that passion in the worship setting because it makes a difference on an eternal level.
Now, did you guys meet each other in college?
We did. Yeah. We were both studying music at North Central University up in Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. That's cool. Now, did you guys, like, when you first started dating, were you singing together like Disney style, and you just realized, hey, this could actually go deeper than just a dating relationship?
It was a whole new world.
Oh, let's go. It was a Jasmine Aladdin moment, and you knew that you'd be together forever.
I mean, in college, I did lead worship on a rug all the time.
Oh, that's true.
Super
Nice.
appropriate.
Yeah.
And when the Spirit moved powerfully, that rug began to levitate.
Wow, we have taken a left turn. I had a worship team that was all guys, and there was like a little bit of flack for like not having any girls involved. And Rebekah walked by the lunch table at the right time, and guitar player said, "Hey, Becca sings," and we asked her if she wanted to come sing.
I was just the token girl, they needed a token girl, and I passed by at the right time, and
Then we all realized how much better she was than all of us, so that worked out well.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes you'll hear couples sing together, and God bless them, the blend is not there. But man, for you guys, you've got the right tone, the right blend, and it worked out. And I just think that's amazing. And then, how long have you guys been married? Because now you've got 2 kids. You're on staff at a church. You're traveling around everywhere.
We've been married 16 years. And
16 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And yeah, we when we graduated, we went on staff at a church. Well, Brad went on staff at a church for a couple of years, and then God just opened up the doors to start traveling.
Wow.
In different
Talk to me
churches
about
and
that.
worship.
Talk to me about that a little bit. Like, how did you guys, like, how did that start? Like, because you guys have been doing this for a long time, and I don't know many worship leaders that have as many Southwest miles racked up as you guys. You guys get like star treatment when you go on an airplane in Southwest. So, I mean, how did you guys first figure out the traveling thing, and maybe more importantly, that was something that you really had a passion for?
Well, like a lot of times in life, you have a plan and then it changes. We had a plan.
Always.
We were on staff at a church, and we really felt God calling us out from where we were, which is kind of, for me personally, wasn't easy. Longevity was something that I've seen in my dad at his church, and he's been there 39 years. And just in my mind, it was like you go to a church, you're there. And to feel very clearly that we were supposed to step out really took me some time to process. But then, as God does, he provided the opportunities to step out. And we thought we were going on staff somewhere else, and that didn't work out. And we had a job, and then we didn't have a job. So it kind of became this like means of survival. Honestly, we started Google mapping cities, and we would, Google map like, Springfield, Virginia, and search for nearby churches, and grab the senior pastor, worship pastor, youth pastor email addresses, and then write an email that said, hi, Pastor so-and-so. We are husband and wife worship leaders, Brad and Rebekah. We're going to be in your area, quotes, if you book us, basically. We'll be in your area.
Right.
And for travel expenses and a love offering, and, link to our unreleased yet acoustic record that we recorded in our apartment. And,
amazing.
That was, that's how we started. So it just kind of snowballed after that. We, our first year on the road, we had 4 weekends off. And then 2 weekends off. And then we went 3 years without a weekend off, and a wise pastor pulled me aside and said, you should give your wife a vacation. Oh. So.
Yes, smart pastor.
Smart, very smart pastor. Yep.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, how do you balance travel ministry? Because, it seems to me like, and as somebody who does travel out about once a month, that's balance can be a tricky word. I don't know if it might be more like, how do you find the right rhythm? But, you're planted in a local church at home, leading consistently there, but then also on the road quite a bit. What does that look like for you guys on a monthly and weekly basis?
It's at one point it was pretty much just always travel. That was when we were first married for the first 5-6 years. It was pretty much just out every weekend. And we had some, relationships and contracts with churches in the DC, Pennsylvania area that gave us a little bit of consistency. And that was just an answer to prayer. But then, out here now where we are in Arizona, we have a contract with a church, and they're extremely generous with, how many weekends we can be there or how many weekends we don't have to be there, depending on how our season of life is. So some seasons have been, we need to be home. We need to be dealing with health stuff, or just working on, what we do overseas, or a new record. And then some seasons like we're in now just are a few too many calls of, hey, so can we adjust this weekend because the new record dropped and now there's some bookings that are coming. And they're extremely gracious and helpful with that, and just cheering us on. So we appreciate that.
Talk to me a little bit about community, because I know that's a huge thing, whether you're traveling or at home. It's such a vital thing. You guys have community within your team, I'm sure, like the musicians that you guys travel with. It seems pretty consistent, but also being rooted in the local church is such a key factor with family, and you guys have kids. And what does that look like for you guys, community, how they surround you guys when you're home or when you're on the road?
Yeah, so we didn't always take advantage of that situation here, just because we were on the road and gone, and people would just, not really know our schedule. But our church has neighborhood groups, which is huge. So more recently, we've been able to get ourselves involved in the neighborhood group locally here. And you're right. That's exactly what happens is we surround each other during, times that we just need that community support. Like, for instance, a 11 p.m. airport pickup. Brad will send out a text to the dads who are still awake. Hey, anybody up for an 11 p.m. airport? After delays or whatnot have happened in our travel day. But yeah, getting involved in a neighborhood group for us, because CCB, where we are in Arizona, is a huge church, and that small network base is vital. Otherwise, you can get lost, even within the music community, because there's just so many, and so many are just busy. And then as far as like the music team here, like we do play with the musicians on a somewhat regular basis, and we get to see them, and it's been a while. It's like, hey, how have you been? Catching up, and the music team is pretty good about getting the word out if someone's in need, especially when we've had times where we need people to come and be support, and especially through COVID as well. There was that network that really surrounded each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. What did that look like for you guys, since you do so many travel dates on the road? When COVID hit, was it just like, hey, we're just going to plant ourselves here and immerse ourselves? Or, I mean, at some point it's like we can't even leave the house. So, yeah, what did that look like for you guys?
It was, I think, not to say just another, but it was another moment where we didn't really have an option but to trust in what God was going to do in his provision for us. And I'm so thankful that, my makeup is to try and fix things immediately. And there was just nothing. There was nothing to do except wait on, whatever decisions.
The problem solver and everybody kind of took a back seat during that season.
And it was really cool to see. I think obviously a lot of people, will always talk about the time they had with their family. I think that was a beautiful thing for us, which, we have a lot of time with our family, but it's like, hey, we're going, get on the plane. We got to go. It's a lot of a lot of that. And this was just dedicated home time. And then our church was just really mindful, of the situations for everyone, whether it be musician or contract worship leader, and just they did a great job at taking care of us and so many people. And then we just had some of those God moments that you don't expect when you open the mail. Let's be honest. And that was some great provision for us. And then we got to do some live streams for churches, and they were again just, I think, trying to not burn out their team, and in the mean, it blessed us in return. So it was cool. It was a weird season. I think we'll all always remember. But I think the biggest thing is remember how many times we just sat around the table at night and had dinner together, which for us is a rarity sometimes.
Man, I tell you what, I mean, I look back on 2020 and just remember it with those kind of like special moments with the family. I mean, out on the back deck, the whole world took a time out, and it did feel like you got a lot of more just personal time with family and all that stuff. And, Rebekah, you hit on this briefly with the idea of like just community being fostered in musicians. And it's like, whenever you see the same musicians, like, hey man, let's catch up. There's something unique I've found through the years, and I know you guys, it seems like we've been leading worship kind of parallel journeys, like as far as just how long we've been leading worship and in ministry. And it's like, there's something special with worship teams where you can always pick up right where you left off. And, when you're kind of a consistent present in different churches, you guys had kind of some consistency with different churches all around the country. It's like popping in and seeing an old family member. What is it about worship teams that just kind of like, it seems like all of the guard goes down for good and for bad, maybe. But it is kind of like that family around the table of like, hey, how are you guys doing? What has that been like for you guys, especially with different band members? And we both know Andrew and Leah Young really well. You guys have traveled with them.
Yep.
It does seem like there's something unique in the worship culture where you're able to just pick right up where you left off. What has that been like for you guys?
I think like with musicians, and then take that to the next level of like that church musician and ministry musician, you get together and you're like, these are my people, And when you have that that sense. You drop the guards, you talk about all the things you have in common and what you've been dealing with in the meantime. It's a safe place to kind of lay your emotions raw, because you're with a fellow creative type too, so you deal with some of the same emotional just stuff. So yeah, I think the guards go down a lot, and we've had that. I mean, we've been able to form relationships with fellow worship leaders as well as just like worship teams at other churches. You get together, and it is like you're with family, and the shoulders, relax a little bit, like, hey, I know your face.
Well, and I'll say this about you guys. You do have a special knack, both of you, for putting the right people in the room at the right time. And I've had the opportunity to go on one of the trips to Uganda with you guys, and it was like, you're in a room with 30 other creatives, and it's like, man, like with this many creative minds in the room, things could go really south. But somehow, like with that common mission, and I think you guys do a really good job of keeping people on mission when it comes to those trips that you organize. You just do a great job of like just keeping people kind of focused on the task at hand. And when that happens, you don't have opportunities really to like get sideways energy or, track on the little things. And I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, like you guys have a special thing going on with missions and worship and Watoto. And I mean, when it comes to missions and worship, the whole idea of music with a mission, those two things don't always collaborate in the way that I think Jesus is super passionate for. I mean, missions and worship, two pillars of the Christian faith. You guys carry it well. Talk about how did you guys get started on that journey with Watoto and just being an advocate for those who maybe don't have a voice?
I call those dangerous thought prayers. It's when you're thinking about wanting to do something, but you haven't like officially laid this before, the foot of the cross and said, God, we'd really like to do this. So we were having one of those thought prayers. Just, hey, we'd love to see the worship that we sing like extend past the walls of the church. This was back in 2009 summer. And lo and behold, 3 days later, I got a phone call. Actually, it was a Facebook message from a good buddy of ours. You know him, Wayne Thomas. And he said, hey, would you, I just moved my family over to Uganda, and would you help provide musical instruments for these amazing kids? Told me all about the ministry. He said they're super talented, but they just don't have the resources for instruments, and a lot of stuff is duct taped together. And I was like, well, we were looking for something, and basically we can give a portion of CD sales, and that's when CDs were like selling. You could actually go to an
back
event
in the day,
live off of that. So that's what we did for 2 years, and then we went and fell in love with the organization, and just had such a heart to do something more. So we wrote a song with a guy named James Teely called "The Heart of the Father," and went back and recorded it with them, and brought back some necklaces, paper bead necklaces. We brought 50 of them, thinking we'd raise a little extra money, and we sold them all in the first weekend. So that was great. And then that just kind of kept going. They would send more and more necklaces, and we'd sell more and more. And I think the first year we sold $30,000 worth of necklaces, and everyone was like,
amazing.
Wow, okay, this is working. And at the end of that year, they had we were in Uganda at a big celebration for Watoto, and someone had given us a little bit of an extra check for the work that was doing there. And they said, hey, I said, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, the instruments are great, but can you bring people? And I was like, yes, we can bring people. And I think back, that was June of 2014, and May of 2015, we did the first camp, and how simple it was, yet what now, we just went in May of 2022 and had 26 people, which was more than double the first team that went. And now in so many additional categories, including the art of coffee, which
nice.
Sorry, Curtis, you missed out on the trip.
Hey, if there's anybody that's passionate about really great coffee, it is Brad. It is Brad all the way.
Yeah,
this guy will not let you go to a Dunkin' Donuts if you're in the same hometown as he is.
Nope. So just to see how far that humble, first time we went, took 10 teachers and a couple wives with us, and now it's like this they have a full-on academy that runs year-round. They have curriculum from 4-year-old all the way through university. It's now like part of the way the church operates and to all of their campuses and worship. I'm just like, man, that was just a little thought prayer that we had back in 2009. Just we'd love to give some money to help worship somewhere outside of the walls of the church.
Wow.
That was,
Wow.
and I love that. I love that it was so simple, and if all it was instruments, and that would be cool too. But we've been so blessed and honored to put people together in a room that I feel like we have no right leading, and they're all looking at you like, okay, what are we doing? I don't know. But we're gonna do it anyway.
I don't know, but we're just gonna get on this ride and not stop until it ends.
But I got you here, so here we go.
Man, just for the listeners, we're gonna put a link to Watoto and how you can kind of find out more about that in the show notes. But I mean, Brad and Rebekah, you guys have been so just minded towards this particular ministry, and you've built this beautiful relationship over the last 10 plus years. And I think for me, just being able to go on that trip, and I had been on, plenty of trips to Guatemala and a couple of other third world countries, but I think being able to kind of more specifically bring what you feel like you're gifted at, right? So, talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you guys do on these camps? I mean, you got worship leaders, you've got photographers. Is it, you're kind of, it's like a camp geared towards teaching kids these skills, and just talk about that. Like maybe share a story from one of the camps that's really stuck out to you guys.
So we call it the Watoto Worship Camp. So pretty much all things church worship and a little bit beyond. So we bring a band, and we bring a band to lead worship for camp, but everyone in the band is a teacher, or able to teach, willing to teach the students in each particular role that they play in the band. So there's workshops all week long. And then there's a preacher that comes and does public speaking and preaching classes. There's worship dance.
Wow.
Obviously vocal.
Photography.
Videography.
We added art, so
Yeah,
painting.
we had a painter with us the last couple trips.
No way. That's amazing.
And live sound production.
Yes.
We also added, and it sounds silly, but so part of this is helping skill the talent that's already there, right? So these kids are super talented, and they are orphan children that have been rescued and brought into the family of Watoto. They've been adopted by Watoto. This is their home now. And the goal is to rescue them, raise them up in godly character, and through them rebuild the nation. And they can, be doctors, nurses, teachers, lawyers, all that stuff. But they still have a God-given talent that are in some of them for music and the arts. And sometimes you just need to give them the resource and teach them how to use it. And then all of a sudden something's coming out and you're like, oh, okay, that's your story. Like your story is important. And this is you finding a way to tell that story. One moment in this last camp that we had, and we could talk for hours on moments, but it was Thursday, the last day, and our worship pastor was with us, and some of the other people from our church, and they were writing with, I think, like 15 kids, a couple of the worship pastors there at Watoto. This big group, right? And he sends me the demo of the song that they did, and he's like, I know it's like in 3 hours the service, but I think we could pull this song off tonight. And
why not?
So I just reached out to the music director for the evening. I was like, hey, Jake, surprise. Here's a song. I don't have chords. Take a listen. And we went into a rehearsal. They ran it twice, and then they led it that night. And it was just beautiful to see the kids that were part of that, right? And the kids that were just part of the camp, just like this was their song. And it's not like maybe one day we'll get a demo back, sometimes it takes time to get all that stuff put together, but like right here, right now, we wrote this, we're using it, we're worshiping God with it, we're worshiping it as a community together. And it was just a really cool moment that I don't think I'll ever forget there. And then the kids singing over us at the end is probably one of the most amazing moments that, Curtis, I don't think you got to experience that, but this trip they did it twice. And I think,
wow,
that'll send you home with a tissue box.
Yeah. As we're getting ready to part ways, they in a cappella sing a blessing over us. And it's very humbling.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I mean,
Subi,
just the land, the people, the spirit that's there. And it's definitely a trip that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. One story that I'll never forget, we met so many beautiful people on that trip. And I think this was back in 2017 or 2018. 2017, that's right. And this one boy, he wanted to learn keyboard, but he couldn't afford a keyboard in his house. And so he actually had this wood plank that he had drawn keys on it. And he showed us his fingertips, and they all had splinters in them. And I've never forgotten that moment. And it's wild, because I'll get chances to speak to worship teams, and I'll just talk a little bit about passion and excellence. And I always use that moment of like, hey, never let what you have in your hands dictate what you can be. And just that moment with that guy, and man, that's just going to stick with me forever. And I think that's such a huge thing if any believer has an opportunity to go on a missions trip and just to see how outside of the U.S., the passion for the Holy Spirit, the hunger for God's presence, it is so inspiring and humbling at the same time. And let's talk a little bit about your more recent journey. Rebekah, I'm not sure what the exact time frame was where you were diagnosed with cancer, but just from a distance, seeing you guys walk this path of trust and hope in the midst of all that has been inspiring. Man, talk to our listeners a little bit about what that was like and what it's like now today.
Yeah. So it was in February 2018. We were getting ready to release an album that we've been working on for 4 years. It was really special because Brad had been interviewing pastors across the country, just really seeking out the heart of the shepherd for worship in the church and putting together notes from those conversations and then sending them to writers to collaborate with in Nashville. So it was a big project, and it was a long project, and we were just really excited and really focused on that. And it was one day before pre-release, and I was in the emergency room. Adeline, our youngest, who's 6 now, she was 1.5 years old, and just being a new mother, I had just missed the growing of a cancerous tumor in my abdomen. And we were in an overcrowded emergency room, and it just took me completely off guard, came out of nowhere. It felt like the doctor knelt down and laid the news on me, and it felt like the floor just got pulled out from underneath me. The wind, just getting knocked out. And it took me a minute to figure out how I was going to handle it.
Wow.
Emotionally and mentally. And I really, to be honest with you, had to struggle through just some faith issues, just with some stubborn, I had to make some stubborn decisions because, it's real easy to just fall into like anxiety and complete fear. And I had to just really struggle through those moments. And the best way I found to do that was to just saturate the room with truths of God's word through music. And so music was playing, worship music was playing, music that is just solid from scripture, basically, and talks about God's ability to handle anything, and his love for us and his goodness. And then also, I made a scripture journal that did the same thing. That just focused on healing and building of faith and God's promises and his ability to follow through with those promises. And all in that, like, balancing like God's promises and his ability to heal, but also with his will and his sovereignty. And it doesn't always look like healing like we want. And I had to wrestle through just being willing to be used for his glory in whatever way that looked like. And that was very difficult. It was a daily process. It was a daily thing that I had to do. And with the scriptures, like I wanted to read them out loud, read them over myself, declare them into the atmosphere. And sometimes, to be honest, I was, like I said, completely overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. And so I physically wasn't able to open my mouth and do that. So I would call in Brad, or my mom was here helping us, and I would call in my mom, who was ever not taking care of the kids at that particular moment. And I would say, I need to hear these scriptures, and I don't have the breath to do it myself. And they would, and God would come in just the most special ways in those moments to just quiet my heart and give me just a unique message in that moment of his love for me. In my mind, I was, struggling with all of that. I was praying for a miracle. I was praying for the tumor to shrivel up and fall out. That's what I wanted to happen. It was like this big, crazy, weird sounding miracle. For some reason, I don't know why I picked it, but I did.
And the tumor was the size of a football.
The tumor was huge. Wow. It was huge. And I just wanted a huge miracle. Firstly, because I didn't want to die. Just being really raw and honest with you. But secondly, like, hey, God, you can save my life and bring glory to you, or to your name, all in one fell swoop, heal me and let everybody see it, So I was praying that prayer every single day. And it didn't shrivel up. It didn't get smaller. It didn't fall out. And we got to surgery date, which was 12 weeks after diagnosis. And it was supposed to be an 8-hour operation. 2.5 hours in, the surgeon came out to Brad and said, it's all done. She's fine. Once we got her opened up, the tumor practically fell out of her body.
Amazing.
So it was just a message from God, like reminding me that I could pray all the prayers I wanted. And whether I felt like he heard me or not, he was reminding me that he did. And he was reminding me that he was with me in all of those quiet, desperate moments, even though my heart didn't necessarily open up and listen for him in that moment. But also the prayer that we pray, we think it's a super awesome plan, but his sovereign will is gonna be what happens, and it's going to be because he loves us and because he's good. And so the miracle for me wasn't the physical healing. It was the mental healing, the mental miracle in my mind. From him, a direct message from him.
It's interesting because so many times, I think we've all prayed for miracles. We've all prayed for healing at some point and it hasn't happened, but to keep the clarity of like God is doing something even when we can't see it. And he may be answering a prayer that we haven't prayed yet, or, maybe we've just prayed it in an alternative type of way. And, your guys' new album, Life Again, how appropriate the title. And I was just listening to it earlier this afternoon, songs like Life Again and Wellness. And it's very clear that God used that season to put something in you that would go so far beyond just that moment. And as I've followed your story, as many people have followed your story and just have seen your faithfulness and your, there's one thing when you're leading worship, I think coming out of a season like that, you just have a renewed sense of the lyrics. You have wow, these are prayers. This just has a whole new life again. Not to put a pun on it, but, talk to us a little bit about that record, what it means to you guys, and just for our listeners, so many people probably share that same that same type of pain, and how you guys have come out of that season. What does this album mean to you guys?
Well, the funny part is we started the record not knowingly writing it before we released the last record.
Wow.
We were having music services done up in Redding, California by Heritage, which is run by Bethel. And they just set up some rights for us. And while we were there talking about the record and working on all those things, and we sat down with Christine DeMarco, and we were talking about, the things in life that we try to control, finances being a big one. And but the Bible says that we're to rejoice, and again, rejoice in whatever situation, whatever season. And so we kind of started, and we just started writing that song and had a pretty decent demo, piano demo. And then everything happened with Rebekah, and we walked through that journey, which she didn't share, but it was about a 12-week journey, which was kind of crazy. It started in February. There was tons of issues with insurance, didn't want to send us where we needed to go. And then all of a sudden we were all paid for by them, and God moved mountains, and all that was taken care of. And then became the healing time, like the weeks after, months after. And somewhere in there, our church said, hey, we're doing a songwriter round. Everyone bring a song, and, we can share. So we called up a buddy, Josh Silverberg, and said, hey, we got this song. I really like it. I'd love to finish it up. Do you have any thoughts? And he kind of helped us rewrite the chorus a little bit. And we went to this meeting, shared that song. And I just remember our creative director, Ben Gow, looking across the room at me, and he's like, you realize that's your story, right? And I was like,
wow.
In this moment right now, yes, now I do.
Wow.
So
wow.
I just remember going home and sharing that with Rebekah, and they ended up recording it and putting it on their church record. And then we released another song called Hold It All in 2020. And 2021, we just felt like, man, it'd be really good to just put like a bow on this story, this process of our life. And let's, get together with, a producer and write a couple more songs. And called up a friend, Bede, who had worked with us on Hold It All, and said, hey, this is what we want to do. He's like, great, sure. And then 7 songs later, we had 9 songs. And
wow.
We were sitting at the table like, well, which one do we not do? And he's like, you do them all. I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
So I was like, all right. And it's pretty cool to like know that every session we were in something different yet aligned the same way, came from it. So we tracked the record, and then God has his way of making it the right timing. So we've kind of sat on it for a little bit, not by choice, but now that it's out, we're just really, we know his timing was perfect with it. So we're just enjoying that. And it's been great to our story will never be done. And we won't ever like forget about what God did. But it's nice to have this like piece that just has talked us through the emotions of it, and the things that we've prayed, or the things we've experienced, or the things we need to be reminded of. Maybe we need to look back on in a couple of years and go, oh, that's right, we wrote that. We know that, actually. We don't have to worry about that. So that's, and we hope that's the same for people who listen to it, that first and foremost, the life that God has given us through his son, Jesus. But we've all walked stories, and, whether it's a health thing or a physical thing or emotional, understanding the life that God has given us and redeemed us from. And it even ties into what we do with Watoto. Those kids, they know what it is to have physical life again. They've been rescued literally out of the grave and given a chance and hope again.
Wow. I love that worship songs can become altar moments that, you look back on those lyrics, or you look back on that moment that the song was written, and you're like, man, look what God did. Look how far he's brought us. Look how faithful he is. And I think you guys have a monument to God's faithfulness with this record. I encourage everybody, go check it out. Life Again. It's on all the platforms. We're going to have a link to the record on our show notes, as well as a link to Watoto and everything Brad and Rebekah are up to. Man, hey, I love you guys. And we're going to have to do this next time in the same room, because our call has been cut off several times. And, but man, just so grateful for you guys. And thanks for giving us some of your time today.
Thanks, Curtis.
You've been listening to Worshipology with Curtis Parks. To learn more and to find resources for worship leaders and teams, you can visit curtisparks.com.